a star. Vegas at the NFR.
NFR Extra is a podcast dedicated to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo and features icons and personalities that embody the Western lifestyle.
I never did do that. I've only broke the barrier out there like 4 times out of 199 runs.
Oh,
so
really?
I score different than a lot of people. You know, my dad always told me we go early because you could always pull. And, you know, once you nod and you're late at Thomas and Mack, I mean, it turns pretty hairy and pretty sketchy pretty quick. You know, you can always pull. You can't never push, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first world title will always, you know, be the most meaningful because, you know, everybody wants to be a world champion. You know, every person that pursued something, you know, and then to finally get that, I'll say finally, I mean, I worked my way to it. It wasn't really a finally thing. And, you know, then when I got it pulled off, it's the most meaningful one because, you know, like I said, your dream your whole life to be one, and then like 2% really actually do become one, you know, so to conquer that, you know, that's what fueled me to go on and become what I became in rodeo.
This is Pro Rodeo announcer Andy Seiler, and you are listening to NFR Extra.
So what's a day in the life of Cody Ole like right now?
Well, I took on a job with Jerry Nelson, who's my boss, Frontier Rodeo Company. So we just been piecing together a bunch of nice young horses and just training them every day. And then on top of that, you know, either morning or evening, I plan around it, you know, as far as my training. I'm doing lots of private lessons, doing lots of girl breakaway lessons, etc. You know, so that's about it, you know, and just raising my own kids and being there for them and teaching them all the little tricks. And then Sailor's a senior this year.
I want to go, that's kind of the balancing everything with the family and with the new job and the career. But I want to go back to the drive that you had back on coming onto the scene as a new young gun. What was your drive and your determination, and how did that get instilled in you?
You know, it's funny you say that because just thinking back on it, there wasn't really any drive in me. Like I'd been at the top of my age groups, you know, and then when I'd go into a new age group as a young kid and then all the way through high school, I always stepped up to the challenge, and, you know, I was, you know, very prosperous all the way through. And then once I got my card, you know, it wasn't one of the deals where growing set on being a champion, you know, like, it wasn't a big topic. It seemed like it is nowadays, and the kids' goals and stuff and all that. I just knew that I had a chance to make it, you know, and I knew I had a chance to become one of the best. But it really wasn't a deal where it fired me up to be a world champion, you know. Because I gave it all I had every time I practiced, every time I roped, every time I thought about it. I gave it up my all, you know. So I can just remember my rookie year in '94. You know, I rodeoed first with Roy Cooper, and then Strand Smith was with us, and then, you know, I bounced around a little bit, and then I ended up with Lanham Mangold and Jim Bob Mays. And, you know, it was before cell phones. It was before all the, you know, stuff we had access to now. And so, you know, we'd go weeks and you know, you'd get to a feed store or something, and then I was living the life that I wanted to live, and I gave my whole life to be able to live that. And I really didn't even know where I was at. I was just enjoying what I was doing and having a lot of success at it. And it wasn't like we kept up with it. So like we rock on there for a little while, and I remember going to the store with Lanham, and he opens up on him sports news, and he says, "Holy crap, man, you're in the top 10 in the world." And, you know, and then I just steadily climbed. You know, I moved up to 5th or 6th, and then I ended up, I think, going in 4th, you know. And it was just one of them deals where we were just living the life that we loved to live, and was, you know, blessed to be able to be good enough to make a great living at it. And that's what kept me going and kept me inspired. But then, every year for me just better, I missed the world championship, a little small mistakes in 96, but I set myself up for a smooth start in 97, and then, off we went. And so, the first world championships, it's always, the first world title will always, be the most meaningful because, everybody wants to be a world champion, every person that pursued something, and then to finally get that, I'll say finally, I mean, I worked my way to it. It wasn't really a finally thing. And, then when I got it pulled off, it's the most meaningful one because, like I said, your dream your whole life to be one, and then like 2% really actually do become one, so to conquer that, that's what fueled me to go on and become what I became in rodeo.
So talk to us a little bit about the differences, because obviously in July with ProCom going down, a lot of the new ways had to revert back to what you guys just saw as common stance. So, what was it like jumping in the truck with those guys and finding the next payphone to make sure that you got entered upright at your next rodeo? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I was really young. And I didn't overthink that because at that point, like Lanham, he was like, he took full charge of most of all of that, and then so when the year after that, when I started rodeoing with Fred, he was taking care of all the entering, but we did stuff together, we were together nonstop. And so I can just remember just, having to drive 100 miles an hour to enter a rodeo that, we got somewhere and it didn't, maybe there was 10 people in line at a payphone and you didn't have time to sit there and wait. You had to try to make it to the next town that entered Cheyenne or get the callbacks or try to get a trade before the deadline. I mean, I just remember how many small towns that we'd have to stop at on our way to a big rodeo, just to try to get entered at a rodeo, and I'm just kind of glad they had to go through it a little bit because they have no idea, and then somebody posted a picture of Fred the other day, and I know I was with him because that was the rig that we had when we were together. He had a Dodge truck with a big old nice camper and a nice bumper pull white trailer. And so they showed him sitting at a payphone in his shorts, and an entering book in his lap. And, we're just pulled over on the side of the road somewhere, and hell, I might be watering the horses or doing whatever, and he's doing what he feels like he's, the best at on our team, and just the hours that we've spent, just parked and entering rodeos. I mean, that was nuts to have to do it that way.
So we all grew up watching those old NFRs, whether it was on tape, on TV, or in person, and we heard the announcers and everybody talk about this huge rivalry between you and Fred and Joe at times. I mean, was it really a rivalry, or was that just something we like to talk about to sell more tickets?
It was just something that become, like, I don't call it a rivalry. I call it the damnedest duo that there will never be. Like, I don't say that just because it's myself or Fred. I mean, they want to compare things, to us, and there's no comparison. There'll never be a comparison because of all the match ropings and stuff that that we had to take part in, and San Angelo being there's not really any other match roping that counts in this whole world other than San Angelo Roping Fiesta, because of the conditions and the cattle and the horsepower and the horsemanship. So we rodeoed in the same, like, I had just messaged him like 3 days ago, just like, and I've done it before, but just, I just thank him for, my dad created a hell of a work ethic in me, but, like, just in his presence and being around him, he took pride in cleaning his stalls better than anybody. He took pride in, before we got to the rodeo, washing his rig, his appearance, his clothes being clean, his you go somewhere, you look sharp, you want that presence, and you want people to take notice of it, and then, it didn't matter. Just everything that he did, he took, ultimate pride, and it just made us better. And then, us competing against each other every day, and we're in the same rig, and winning first and second, and I would win first, he would win second, just day in and day out, just making each other better. And then me being younger, like I told him in this text, was like, at times I felt like I was his little brother, like that's how much stuff he'd done for me. And then all the stuff that I'd learned from him, just being with him and watching him and joining in and doing things,
Yeah, that's
what I mean. I wouldn't call it a rivalry. It's just the best guy won that day. It wasn't really a rivalry. Like for 5 or 6 years, we're literally in the same truck and trailer a whole year long, and rooting for each other and 1-2 punching them everywhere,
So what happened with regards to establishing such a dominance at the NFR? I mean, that's like the culmination of all your year, and then, going with those guys in the best and having Fred in the truck and moving forward. But what do you accredit 52 wins at the Thomas and Mack to?
I credit to, I started taking pride in it because even today, I know that however fast somebody might have been in a go around, and you leave here to the last ropers of the go around, I don't care if somebody tied 1 in 5-9. I promise you that person, until he or I roped, did not feel 1 ounce safe that we couldn't have beat them at any time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just turned in, I think about a lot of things during the day, but like Caleb Smith right now, with his family and loving to be home and ranching and doing all that, it's kind of, he's getting a dose of what I went through. Like, he wants to be there for whatever his kids are involved in, and he's dominated. He's won 3 or 4 average and then 3 or 4 average championships and 4 world championships and, Calgary. I mean, it just gets to where, yeah, you want to set all the records and you want the most gold buckles, but then it almost turns into, you don't want to miss all that family time. Well, then it turns into a game like it did with me. Like, how less can I go to make the finals and still have a chance at a world championship? It turned into more of a game to me doing that than it did to, like people ask me about world championships. If I told you in December that I was going to be the world champion the next year, you could just mark my words, because I knew that I was going to give it more. I was going to get to more rodeos. I was going to practice more. I was going to do all the things to become the world champion. If I missed it by a few nickels just because I felt like I missed 10 or 12 rodeos during the year that I probably shouldn't have, but I didn't want to be there because I wanted to be at home with my kids, So if I made my mind up after a year like that I was going to win it, I would win it, So, and it wouldn't be like one of them deals where it come to the 10th round. If I wanted to win it, I won it, So that's the deals that mean the most to me. And then, like I said, the game of inches where I can stay home and make it in 35 rodeos, stuff like that. But as far as the go-arounds out there, every night I treated it like a separate rodeo. I didn't treat it like anything else, Like my dad always told me, if you win every round, you're going to win the average, So
it's pretty simple math.
Everybody just always thought I was just a, live or die by the sword and win first or go completely out of the average. I grew up winning averages, year ends, all that stuff. Well, that's consistency, and that's average, So it wasn't that. If you put $18,000 in front of me, I'm going for first. I'm not going for third, And then, just for instance, now that it pays so much, people thought that the money being added to a greater amount would make the events better. Well, in the way I go about it is it didn't make it better. Yeah, you got a couple of guys that go for first every time still, but it made it where a guy could just be and have an average night every night and leave there with $100,000.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not. I mean, you let me run at $30,000. I'm going to try to win $30,000 every night. I'm not trying to win $20,000 every night if it pays 30. So, and even with that, you get a guy that goes, he weighs his options. He's got to be 7-1 to win a world championship, or he's got to be 8-3 to win the average. I'll jeopardize an average for a gold buckle any day of the week. And then that's what Fred would do as well. There was no layups just to collect a $70,000 average check when there was a chance for a gold buckle.
Right. Do you, I mean, not that I don't think it really mattered, but like your mindset of you're going to go in there to win. Did you have a preference on, I kind of want to see how these calves are running or see what the time is set, or I want to be first and put the heat on everybody else?
It really didn't matter. I would always go in there just to watch just a handful of guys. I knew who I needed to watch, and try to get a little motivation off of it. And then, the first few years, the timed events were like the rough stock. If you got started off good early in the week, well, you were held to the last ropers, So as, like when Fred and I started dominating, that was still like that. And then after about 2 years, they done away with it because it was like we had an advantage because we got to go last,
Yeah.
So I've won a lot of go-arounds out there being the very first roper because I just go at it the same every night. Like some people say the first 3 rounds are a little safer and they see more at the start. I never did do that. I've only broke the barrier out there like 4 times out of 199 runs.
So, really?
Wow.
And I've kept it real. Like Trevor, I've made him actually break the barrier some because I score different than a lot of people. My dad always told me, we go early because you can always pull. And once you nod and you're late at Thomas and Mack, I mean it turns pretty hairy and pretty sketchy pretty quick. You can always pull. You can't never push,
Yeah.
Let's take a quick pause, and we'll be right back. Want to relive the best NFR moments from the last 37 years? We've got you covered at NFRExperience.com. Check out the NFR History tab at the website for a walk, or should we say gallop, down memory lane. You'll find images, recaps, and videos from the greatest moments from the last 37 years in Las Vegas. From Ty Murray to Trevor Brazil, Louis Field to Casey, Charmaine James to Mary Berger, Fred Whitfield to Joe Beaver, and everything in between, you'll find it here. There's something for all rodeo fans. Check it out at NFRExperience.com, because legacies and memories are made in Vegas.
Speaking of go-rounds, are you surprised that 6-5 is still the record?
After I watch these runs and stuff, like, for instance, Trevor, when he tied my record first. I was there. I was there flanking bulls that year at the finals, and so I was actually on the buck and shoot by the center alley there and watched it. And I craved that kind of calf that he drew. That's what I wanted to draw every night. One that I had to hit the barrier on, and the calf has 0 tricks, but he leaves there running sharp so I could take as sharp a start as I wanted to. I know for sure a couple of times there that, I mean, honestly, I felt like I could be 6 flat, and I just had a little bit of something go wrong, just barely, it got me off of that goal of mine. But the last go around out there, when my calf walked out of the chute in 2013 and they didn't give me a rerun, I honestly texted Jeff Metters. I said, I will be 6'3" tonight. I mean, that was my ultimate goal. That was what, when I nodded my head, I didn't care if 8'9" was winning the go round. I told him I was going to be 6'3", and I was, 6'6", and, just 0.3 off of it. But, that was my mindset, and, and that's the way I went about it every night. And so, like I said, going back to the 6'5", both Shad and I, we drew good. I had a lot more on the line, than he did. They're going to get the record because you get guys like him or Riley. If something happens, they go out of the average. They're just going to try to beat the record. You know what I mean? Like, it'll be an 8-second go around winning it. And when those guys go, that just turns into trying to beat the record then, And so somebody's going to get it pretty soon. And then, but like I said, like Trevor's calf started sharp, ran, and he maxed him out and was 6'5", and it just looked sharper that way than like Shad and I. Both our calves were a little bit off the pace, so we kind of had to stay with our horse a little bit longer and kind of set the go up a little bit, which Trevor, he could just kind of throw it and go. And so two of the runs were almost identical, and then like Trevor's was as a calf like I like to draw. So, but if they hadn't beat it yet, I mean, that's a hell of a run in my books,
Yeah, that's unreal. Well, with all of the accomplishments that you've had throughout your entire career, you can be legend in the sport of rodeo. But what does it mean to you when you hear your name, an icon of rodeo?
Well, it's just I know what I put into it. You know what I mean? An icon is, I know, being in the Hall of Fame, that's the icon, But as far as just the Thomas and Mack being an icon, I went there not only just for myself to win, but to get people out of their seats and get them on their feet. I've had at least 6 or 7 full house standing ovations. That's what drove me. That's what I wanted. I wanted to become, one of the greats, but I was also, I don't like to rope in the slack because I consider myself an entertainer. I mean, I said, George Strait probably doesn't sing very good at 7 in the morning. It doesn't sound very good either. And I know for sure you can give me the same calf at 8 in the morning, and I'll be a half a second slower than I would be if you put me in a performance in a packed house. And with every eye on me, I'm going to give you more than what I'm going to dig a little deeper. Because that's holding me accountable, like in the slack, there's 20 people watching, and it's not really that big a deal to me. But you put me in a packed house and, one of the best announcers in the world and lighting my fire, you're going to get the best Cody Hill you can imagine.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole energy is neither created nor destroyed, but passed from one organism to another. And you create that energy. Sure. People feel that energy and you get rolling on that. And it's just a bouncing back and forth. And it's hard to contain when you see something spectacular that, is right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, sure. And like with Bob and Boyd both, and I call it, it's not really wasn't the Bob's prime, but you mix Boyd in there when he was, those guys, I mean, they're always going to be the greats in my mind, but at times they were actually better together than they are now. Like it just kind of gets more mellow and mild, but this is when they first started kind of collaborating and working together.
Right.
I could ride in there and then I might have had a little bit of hell in a couple of rounds, when I didn't place, and then it never failed. One of them will just lit my fire past lighting my fire. They didn't throw a pint of gas on me. They threw a whole bucket, and from that point on, I was going to get that round for sure. I mean, you done fired me up past winning first. You made me win the round by a half second. So in those guys being a performer and them guys being on their best made me a better performer every time, I was blessed to be in their presence as well.
So in 2 decades of competing at the NFR, is there one memory that stands out above the rest?
Just the night I set the record because I had to. It wasn't like I didn't have anything to lose. I had it all on the line. I mean, I had to put the hammer down, and so. And to set the record on the biggest stage like that, and in the World Championship on the line, and not just a go around win because I went out of the average or I didn't have a World Championship on the line. That night was unreal. And the way that the roof come off that place when everybody erupted, and they had already kind of had a little teaser to it, because Jerome's calf got up to be 6'7" for the record, so we already had we already had them on the edge of their seat, you know. And by the time I roped, you know, that nobody had already relaxed. You know, they were expecting some greatness, you know, and to serve it up on a platter like that,
that's unreal.
It was pretty special.
Yeah, that's absolutely unreal. And you know, the energy in the Thomas and Mack is pretty spectacular, but then you have moments like that with the buildup and then the delivery of said performance. It's very, very hard to contain.
Now, wait a minute. With all these horses and stuff that you're training, you're not planning a comeback, are you?
You know, I'm not saying I'm not. You know, I've got some great horses. I actually got a daughter, 10-year-old daughter right now of that great mare that I rode, Sid Miller's Pearl.
Mm-hmm.
And her name's Benny Pearl. And you know how it is. All the years they'd say, "Oh man, you need to come ride this horse. I got the next Pearl." Well, they didn't have the next nothing, you know. So I rode this mare a couple of months ago, and I just had to actually unsaddle her in the return alley because there was nobody here to rope. So I just run a cap up and down, and she was like riding a clone. I mean, I had to unsaddle her right then. I mean, the hair on my arms was standing up. I mean, like the feeling she gave me, you know, I don't know if I could make it. You know, I'd like to give it a try, but I mean, I just been going to some amateur rodeos and then trying to work my way back from, you know, all my health issues and stuff. But I really don't think I can, to be dead honest, you know, and it's not something I'm going to spend a lot of time stealing time away from my daughter and my boys and stuff to, you know, where they're at the point in their life, they're needing me to push them as well, you know, and for me not to be there as much, it's probably not going to happen. So I'm blessed to have a great job. I make good money. I'm doing what I love to do and here every night for my kids, my family. It's just, life couldn't be much better right now. And, you know, I just think that it's going to be a lot of time away from home and steal my peace, you know?
Yeah. Cody, I got one more question from you. And talking to you about being on the biggest rodeos, on the biggest platforms, on legendary and iconic levels, what is it like going back and doing amateur rodeos?
You know, I've kind of learned, you know, like, cause I never amateur rodeoed, you know, I went to a handful, just to enter them. But, you know, there's actually, I probably went to 20 amateur rodeos this year with my daughter and I didn't compete at a few of them, but there's actually 6 or 8 that I would go to still again and enter them all over again because I got some good energy off of them. I had fun. You know, they had a packed house, you know, they had a decent announcer, you know, like it was kind of feeding me what I was been missing, you know, and there's a lot of them that I would never freaking enter again, you know, like it felt like I was at a 1980 amateur rodeo because it was the same arena they built in 1960 and, you know, just a so-so fan base. And, you know, it was just like, man, I don't want to be here. We got
the chicken pluck.
60% of the rodeos I went at later in my career, man, I don't enter this rodeo because I don't want to be here, you know?
Yeah.
Do you get more nervous?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. It's funny what you were going to say because I was just fixing to say that. Like, I've actually shared a horse with her at 4 or 5 rodeos, my old buckskin. So I'd always hoped that I roped first before her because I mean I would be wringing wet by the time I had to get myself ready because I'm just, you know, I'm so invested in her and I'm so proud of her and I mean I want the best for her and I get so worked up and I overthink and I do all those things, you know, it's almost easier for me to compete first and then let her get on and do her thing. But you know, the other night it was probably our best night together at Sonora at the amateur rodeo, but it was like the old days. I mean, like it was like at a big pro rodeo because it was packed like it used to be when Bad Company had it. And we all entered it. And like I said, it was a packed house and she had to rope before me. And I mean, just blows her a start. And she's actually riding Mini Pearl as well. Blows her a start and makes the best run. She's probably, you know, she won third, but she probably made the best run and the prettiest loop. And everything just come together like we'd been working at for years. And, you know, I was just eat up with pride, you know. So then I'm wanting to win the rodeo with her, but like she won third, and I had probably a chance to win first, and then I just took an extra swing to kind of be a little safe. But I was just my mind really wasn't on my run as much as I really needed it to be, because my inner peace was so amazing, because I'd run a couple of calves on that mare in the practice pen that morning, and the very last calf that I run was her identical run on that mare, and me setting that mare up to make her better for Sailor that night. You know, not for me, I could get by with less, but I set that mare up for her to be her best for Sailor that night, and her calf actually ran the same pattern as that very last calf I ran that day, and it was actually my best run on that mare that day. And so for all that to play out the way it did, and then to see her succeed because of me helping that mare that morning set that play up, and then had no clue that, you know, she was going to draw a calf identical to that in the same setup as that. You know, I was almost still just caught up in how awesome her night just was, and I let winning first kind of slip by because I'm still kind of in that moment of her, you know.
Right. That's a winning first right there, just in that deal, and the inner peace and everything else.
That was, you know, I ended up placing, you know, like fifth, but it was one of them deals like it was a perfect night because she had a perfect night, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then it was fun driving home because, you know, I didn't win much money. She won like 1,400, and I won a couple of hundred, but it was like she chattered the whole way home, you know, just it meant so much to her for us to both have a good night the same night. And then her fixing to start school, she had her best night of the whole summer. So it was a very blessed night.
Well, speaking of blessings, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, Cody, and we appreciate your time, and we can't wait to see you when you come back out here to Vegas.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, this icon deal is just like the Hall of Fame, you know, just the icing on the cake to a well-baked cake, you know.
And well-deserved at that. So we really appreciate you, and safe travels, and have a good rest of your year, Cody.
Yes, sir. You guys too.
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Want to experience more of the NFR? Then visit NFRExperience.com, and we invite you to subscribe to NFR Extra on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you're listening right now. If you like what you've heard on NFR Extra, we would love it if you gave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe.